But in terms of a temperature, it's not just outside the house that's getting a bit chilly. It's inside the home as well. And I'm not just talking about, you need new insulation and a heat pump. Talking about the relational temperatures. Well, at least Wynand Jacobs from FamilyLife is talking about that. Kia ora, good morning. How are you?
Kia ora, Andrew. I am well, thank you. And I'm almost just keeping warm, actually.
Yeah, good. And a nice heat pump is useful. And I'm sure we could push into the metaphors here. When it comes to our relationships, what does good insulation look like, for example? How can we have dry and healthy homes? Well, it's not quite dry July yet, but I don't know. Maybe that's something which we could work into the metaphor.
Let's not mix our metaphors too widely. But hey, have you ever lived in a cold, damp house before?
I was a student at Otago University, so the answer is definitely yes.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure most of us have probably been there at some stage. And have you lived in a nicely well-insulated, well-ventilated home before?
Yeah.
Probably,
so good.
Yeah. And it's a massive difference, right? And so I actually recently got thinking about this idea of, what is the difference between those two homes? Because the outside temperature is going to change.
Yeah.
We get seasons, we get summer, we get winter. And I guess your point in Dunedin, had a few friends visit from Dunedin last week, and it was a pretty cold week for Auckland, but they rocked up in their shorts, and I'm like, I can tell you're from Dunedin, but
exactly.
I'm wearing my jacket and all. But here's the thing, right? The difference between a well insulated home and one that's not been well treated or insulated is the cold on the outside can get on the inside.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Or the heat on the inside gets lost, right? And isn't that true for our marriage as well? There's nothing worse than living in a cold house.
Yeah.
But something that comes close, or that might actually be worse, is living in a cold marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's more to relate between a house and a marriage than we might care to admit.
Certainly. And one of the things which I think is great with this example is there are seasons in a marriage. There are seasons where it's easy to be warm, and then there are also things that happen external to our marriage that we may think this is outside of our control, but it just does drop the temperature. It is a threat to the warmth within our household. And we think, oh gosh, that's just seasons. There's nothing that I can do about it. But back to the insulation metaphor, there is something we can do about it.
Exactly. And that's the hope, if it became a bit cold about the temperature in the relationship and a bit, a bit depressing, because I appreciate some of our listeners out there might be listening and say, yeah, it stinks.
Yeah.
The weather is cold. My relationship is cold. Life's not looking great at the moment. There is hope. There is hope, because just as we can take steps to warm up our house, be it, get some firewood for the fireplace if you have one, or install a heat pump, or switch it on if you have one. There's various ways, maybe a cozy blanket, or these new oodies. My kids just love these oodies. They run around in those, and it's like you're basically wearing a blanket. I mean, who's the genius who came up with that idea? You need to.
He's a rich genius, I think. Yeah,
a big high five. But same in marriage, and I mean, we talk about all the different things you can do to make a great marriage happen. That's one of our key phrases here at FamilyLife. Great marriages don't just happen.
Yeah.
And so the problem isn't the temperature outside. The problem isn't the things we face in life. The problem is our insulation. The problem is, what have we done in our marriage to build in good rhythms, things that warm up our home, things that warm up our marriage? And now I'm talking about the home, not the house per se.
Yeah, exactly.
And so my encouragement to our listeners today is, think about what things you're not doing that you could be doing to warm up your relationship, to warm up your house, to have them warm up to you. And here's one that's like the most surefire way to get some traction in that direction is practice gratitude and appreciation. There's nothing that would warm up someone towards you than you expressing gratitude to that person.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Even though you might have a list of things that you want to complain about, let's forget the complaints. Like complaining in marriage is like opening the slider, all the ranch sliders and all the windows of your home when it's sub-zero degrees outside and you're trying to keep warm.
If you want your marriage colder, that's great advice. But like you say, who wants that?
Yeah.
It is, I suppose, a principle of physics as well as relationship, that if you've got one area that's warm and one area that's cold, what happens over time is the warm area gets colder. Things balance out. And look, even for the best marriages, if left to their own devices, it may start out warm, but over time things get cooler. And look, even if you're not making terrible decisions, if it's just the law of thermal dynamics and entropy, I've probably got that wrong. My science teacher will be appalled. But there's a principle which says that if something's warm and there's something cold next to it, then that they will balance out over time. It's not just heating up our marriage, it's putting that insulation in to make sure that we don't get that heat loss, right?
Yeah, and where have I heard the analogy between cold and warm before? I think it's right there in the book of Revelation, where it says, rather you were cold, but now that you're lukewarm, I'd spew you out. So there's something about that temperature not being hot, not being white hot. Yeah. We get married, our relationship starts, there's a lot of warmth and love towards one another. Mm-hmm. I'd probably explain that as white hot. Yeah. And that's probably the only temperature you really want your marriage at is white hot. And if it's not there, well, let's aim to get it there. Yeah. Because if it's cold, you're just drifting and you're just coasting through. And I love how, and I think we spoke about this maybe a few weeks back, but I've been on this thing of when relationships drift. In the book of Revelation, God also talks to his church. And first he says, you have done all these great things. Commitment is there. You've been so diligent in doing the work. But then that word but comes in. Yeah. But I have one thing against you. You have lost your first love. So our commitment in marriage might be looking good. We have a house to live in, right? We've got food to eat. But the reality is, are we still in that white hot temperature in our marriage? So I would encourage anyone, whether you rate your marriage at an 8 out of 10 right now. Yeah. How can you take it one step warmer?
And hey, I think, and again, this works well with a seasonal metaphor. You don't wait until winter to go, oh gosh, we should probably get some insulation and a new heat pump for the house. You can prepare out of season for what you know is likely to be a seasonal change. Even if your marriage is doing good, let's put some insulation now to keep it warm for when those colder, those tougher periods, those tougher seasons for your marriage are ahead. You can put some good work in now to keep it strong during those tough seasons.
That's the one. So be prepared and think about, how am I warming up my marriage right now?
Very good. I feel warmer already, actually.
Okay.
Might take my puffer jacket off, or Wynand, some wonderful wisdom and advice. And hey, actually, at a practical level, there's so much good resources available on your website, through podcasts and other resources as well. I would encourage people to subscribe to some of the emails and some of the services that you guys offer. A wonderful way to keep your marriage toasty warm right through the winter season. Of course, FamilyLife.nz for more information. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.